Would the Vegas Golden Knights consider trading Shea Theodore in a package for Jack Eichel? We're going to discuss that possibility here today. We also have some trade rumors concerning Korpisalo and the Columbus Blue Jackets, as well as the Los Angeles Kings looking for help on the blue line. We have a signing to discuss, some more injuries, and another update as well on the Hawks scandal as well. All that and more coming up next. Well, welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. Of course, as you likely know, in the last 24 to 48 hours, the scandal with the Chicago Blackhawks has kind of dominated the NHL news headlines. It's dominated much of what we've talked about here on the channel as well. So another quick update here. One, we know that the meeting between Joel Quennville and Gary Bettman did take place this afternoon. We do know that Joel Quennville was accompanied by GM Bill Zito, and I believe team president was with them as well. So we do know that. We know the meeting is concluded. There's been no update offered by the league. We're not really sure at this point when we're going to get a result, but nothing's been announced or decided upon. But according to NHL insiders, Chris Johnson was reporting on this earlier, he believes all options are on the table. So it could result in the Panthers requesting him to resign, or a combination of the Panthers and the league. It could result in suspension, or could result in other types of punishment. So there's likely something coming. We just don't know what. Now, Kevin Cheveldayoff, the GM of the Jets, was supposed to meet with Gary Bettman on Monday, and at his own request, Chevy has requested that they bump it up. So now he's flying to New York today and meeting with Gary Bettman. I'm not sure what time, but it's been bumped up to tomorrow on Friday. So maybe it won't take too long to get these meetings over with and a decision made on the future. Another good point I've seen brought up on Twitter earlier is considering what Kyle Beach has made known publicly through this interview he did with Rick Westhead last night, as well as what's available in the report that's been released by the lawyers. Beach said himself he tried to get the NHL to investigate, and they wouldn't get anywhere. Like, they didn't, basically refuse to help him look into this a long time ago. And even as recently as he said, even a few months ago, what did Gary Bettman and Bill Daly know? Like, were they interviewed by this law firm? It's another thing. Like, here's Gary Bettman possibly handing out punishment for those involved. And you got to wonder, where the league wouldn't step in and help him when he asked for it. What did they know? And should there be something else? It's a good point. And I really imagine there's probably nothing going to be done about it because they're at the top of the food chain. But, it's something that should be looked into. And I really don't know how we'd go about that or whatever. But it's just something that I hadn't thought of until I seen it on Twitter just a short time ago. On to some other news. We do have some injury updates here. The Kings are hit hard with injury, which is why we're going to talk about them in the trade rumor mill. They need some help. Doughty is going to be out for about 2 months, an 8-week time span for his knee injury that happened with that knee-on-knee collision not that long ago. Doughty will be able to resume skating, hopefully in about 6 weeks, and at the 8-week mark, if all goes well, should be able to play. So that's going to be a big blow for him, especially where he had big aspirations to make the Canadian Olympic team. I mean, obviously, they know what Drew Doughty can bring. He's been with the Olympics before, represented Canada numerous times at various levels, long-time NHL veteran. So it doesn't mean he won't get a shot, but certainly, I don't think he's a given to be on the team. And at this point, most players like him, we're looking forward to showcasing what they can do for that opportunity. So I'm not sure how that'll impact things, because that's going to eat away at a lot of the time when they have to make decisions on those rosters. So unfortunate timing for him. Sean Walker, another defenseman with the LA Kings, somebody that was expecting and hoping for a much better year, bounce back year, and he's going to be out for the season. He suffered another injury with an MCL and ACL issue, and he's done for the year. So that kind of creates a big hole on the Kings blue line. So we'll get into that here in a little bit, but certainly an area that they're going to need some help on. Another injury too. He was a player that's been playing extremely well lately, but Caps forward TJ Oshie is out as well with a lower body injury. He's considered week to week, so he'll be out a minimum of a week. We'll see how long that actually goes here. Now, some of the other quick news items are going to kind of play into the trade rumors here as well. It kind of all ties together. But we have the Vegas Golden Knights announcing today that they've signed young defenseman Zach Whitecloud to a 6-year extension at $2.75 million value. Now, Whitecloud is a real good, promising young defenseman. Certainly his role has been slowly building with the Knights over the last couple of seasons. This is a pretty good value, $2.75 for 6 years. I think is good. I mean, even if he's a third pair defenseman, which I think he could be more than that longer term, and if there's anything to the suggested trade we're going to talk about, then his role will increase likely for sure. So, that's a pretty good signing in my opinion. They also signed Ben Hutton today, who was a guy who's been around the NHL for a while now, but had not signed anywhere as of yet. He gets a 1-year deal at $750. So they extend Whitecloud for potential for a long-term deal to possibly play a bigger role, and they get Ben Hutton on a 1-year deal for some extra added depth. So Vegas is bulking up on the blue line. They've already got Pietrangelo, they got Martinez, they got McNabb, Whitecloud, Hague's in the picture, Hutton's there. So, and they're not the only one. So, there could be something to that. We'll get into that here momentarily, but there's certainly a connection there. What Vegas might be working their way to a potential Jack Eichel deal, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to pause and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Now on to the big trade rumor. Now this is more of a suggested trade from Jesse Granger of The Athletic, who's the beat writer for the Vegas Golden Knights, and you have to think he obviously gets inside information to some degree at least. This is something that he put out on Twitter not too long ago, and it's getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so, because it's a really interesting concept, and you have to think. So I'm going to show you a couple of tweets from Jesse and see what he's suggesting here on a potential Buffalo-Vegas Eichel trade involving Shea Theodore, and let me know what you think here in the comments. So essentially, here is the first tweet where he says, hypothetically, if the Golden Knights were trading for Jack Eichel, Shea Theodore would be an attractive piece. Hypothetically, it would make sense to lock Zach Whitecloud up long-term before making that move, elevating Whitecloud's role to a second pair defenseman. Hypothetically. He also goes on to say, hypothetically, if the Sabres were interested in Theodore, it would make sense for Vegas to play Alec Martinez alongside Theodore last night, who he's played with, rather than putting Martinez back up with Pietrangelo. Hypothetically. So it sounds like he's kind of hinting at something he might have heard, but without actually coming out and just being more forthcoming. But essentially, if you look at the Vegas Golden Knights, and you look at any team really around the NHL, their glaring need is for a top center. And sometimes you have to trade from a position of strength to add value in a position of weakness to make that a stronger position, right? So clearly their blue line has been, for the most part, during their existence, a pretty good part of their team, a very important piece. They've done well early on with a lot of the D that they got in the expansion draft. They've been able to add to it through free agency, like Alex Pietrangelo, and through trade with Martinez. Martinez is a huge part of that team. You get Petro there. You just signed Whitecloud to a longer-term 6-year extension. You get Braden McNabb. So there's your top four if Theodore's not involved. And maybe Theodore goes and you keep the youngster Nick Hague. Would Buffalo be interested? And I mean, Theodore's a guy who is a top. He's still relatively young. And obviously he makes a decent amount of money, so from a cap perspective, it helps out. It's just a very interesting concept. So obviously at the end of the day here, we don't know what Buffalo would do. Now I've seen some people suggesting maybe Theodore is good enough that it would be a 1-for-1 trade. I don't see that being the case. If this kind of deal were actually being discussed and were serious, which you never know, maybe it could be, I would think there'd have to be more involved, because clearly, short-term wise, Eichel would not be an issue for the cap because he could go right through LTIR. They got Pacioretty on LTIR. Stone's hurt. They got all these injuries. So in the early going, it wouldn't be an issue. Now, the other part of that problem is that Eichel wouldn't be there to help them right away, and then you're subtracting from Theodore. So would they maybe find another way to add something else in the interim? Like there would have to be other pieces involved here, I think. And I think from Buffalo's standpoint, as good as Theodore is, I think they're going to want more. But it might allow them to keep Hag, and if they have Hag and Whitecloud in the mix, they've got McNabb. Like, you know, at least it's just balanced things out a little bit better from a cap perspective, which we know has been an issue for Vegas. They've been spending to the max, trying to get that Stanley Cup, and it could be a way to help balance things out that way. I still think there's a potential that they could move forward, whether it's the expiring contract of Riley Smith. Maybe Evgeny Dadonov, maybe. He's starting to pick up a little bit, but still, I don't know. Like, they have to move out. Probably, it's possible that they move another contract. But it wouldn't necessarily have to be something that's involved with the Eichel trade, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be something that's involved immediately. Now, I don't know what all Buffalo would want. Maybe Buffalo would include something else besides Eichel. Maybe that turns into a big, massive trade. I mean, a 1-for-1 deal is interesting to think about. I personally just don't see it happening, but I mean, they're similar age. They're both, a top player at their respective positions. I just don't know. I mean, it would certainly shake up the hockey world to be getting a huge reaction. I'm not convinced that's how it would go down, but it is an interesting concept here with what Granger is saying. It does make sense. With the elevation of Whitecloud, the addition of Hutton, maybe Vegas is preparing for a potential Theodore trade to get that help up front. So something to think about. Let me know what your thoughts are on that potential. Should Vegas pursue this? Should they consider trading Theodore? It's a risky deal. He's such a good defenseman who provides a lot of offense. But like I said, when you're trading for value, and you need to trade out value sometimes, and obviously he could do that without taking away from the forward group, and they're trading from a position of strength. So we'll see. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. We'll discuss that in the comments. As I mentioned as well, the LA Kings are looking for help. According to Pierre LeBrun on Insider Trading on TSN, he's reporting that the Kings and Rob Blake are burning up the phones looking for potential help on the right side of their blue line after guys like Doughty and Walker are banged up and hurt long term. They do have a lot of youth that they can bring up. Obviously, they have guys like Bjorn Foot and Clegg and others that can kind of fill in here and kind of get more minutes and more role, but they could use an extra veteran guy. They're already fairly young on the blue line as it is, and you take away Doughty especially, who's by far the top defenseman and one of the more, older veteran leaders on that team. You could use somebody that's a little bit more experienced back there to kind of balance things out. So, we weren't really linked to any particular defenseman specifically, but it makes sense that it would be somebody obviously that wouldn't be on a long-term deal or anything like that, somebody on an expiring contract or somebody that's not making a ton of money that could come in as a depth piece. They're not going to replace Drew Doughty. Like, that's almost an impossible thing to do, right? But somebody who can play some bigger minutes that's not brand new to the NHL. So you look around, maybe a guy like Colin Miller in Buffalo. I mean, he's, like I said, he's no Drew Doughty, but he's, it's an option, right? Somebody who's experienced who can play some minutes for you. We'll see what the Kings do, but they're certainly looking at all their options, and it would not be surprising to see them add to the blue line in the coming days. Maybe if an interesting guy goes on waivers, we could see that as well. We'll see where that goes. And Dave Pagnotta, thefourthperiod.com, talking about Jonas Korpisalo today, talking about the fact that there's a really good chance that the Jackets do move him, and he referenced again a team like the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers proved last night that goaltending is their Achilles heel. Goaltending is where they need to make the change when they're able to, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody. Koskinen was at times brilliant and at times terrible in the same freaking game. He's not consistent at all, which is a big part of the problem. You can't rely solely on Mike Smith, especially at his age, to get you through the whole season. You're playing with fire for that. And, adding a younger goaltender who could not only help you now, but, somebody you could re-sign for the future also could be a huge thing, and somebody they might be able to get at a pretty decent cost-controlled amount that it can stabilize the position for the next number of years, even if it's 3, 4, 5-year deal, something to that effect. It could be huge for Edmonton, really. Like, they're tons of offense. They got McDavid and Draisaitl, playing at an extremely high rate. Their blue line is getting better over the years. They need to solidify that goaltending spot if they really want to be cup contenders, in my opinion. And Korpisalo is one of those guys that, he might not be like one of the first guys that comes to mind when you're thinking, geez, we want to have a stud goalie, but he's good. He's a real good goaltender. You just need sometimes the cup-winning teams look at, I know we talked a lot about the Hawks lately, look at Corey Crawford when he was helping them win Stanley Cups. Corey Crawford wasn't really looked upon as being like that stud Vezina Trophy top-notch guy, but he was really, really solid, just above average to get you those saves when you need it most. Think of in the past, if you look at hockey history, your Chris Osgoods and, Mike Richter and those guys, they weren't always looked upon as being big superstars, but they got the job done, especially when it mattered most. And Korpisalo, I think, could possibly be a guy that could, fall into that category when his career's all said and done. So let me know what your thoughts on everything discussed here today in the comments section. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We will keep you up to date with all the latest news and rumors on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.